Hi everyone, you're welcome to jumpsuit class. Okay, so before we start making our jumpsuits, you need to know how to make a basic bodice block. I have a video on that on my YouTube channel. So I believe you're in the intermediate class and you ought to know certain things already, how to draft a sleeve. It's on my YouTube channel as well, how to take body measurement and how to take body measurement for pants. Okay, so these are the things we'll be combining together to create a jumpsuit. So if you're in the intermediate class and you don't know how to do all that yet, well, I don't know if... Okay, just go ahead to my YouTube channel and watch those videos. But then I need to state something here about taking body measurement for jumpsuits. Okay, so once you take your half length, so remember the back half length and the front half length are still different, but once you take your half length for the front, don't make it too high. Okay, don't make your half length high for a jumpsuit. I don't think you're going to like the outcome, so make it a little bit lower than you, maybe like 1 inch longer than you normally would have taken for your half length. Okay, for instance, I use 17 inches normally, but for jumpsuit I think I'll use 18 or 18.5 for myself. That's because I don't want a high, it's just going to look weird if your jumpsuit is as high as the half length of your peplum top, for example. So if your pant is starting from that point, the crotch is going to be extra long and you're not going to like it really. So take your half length, then tie something around that point. Okay, so tie something around your waist. In fact, tie it first before you start taking the measurement. Tie it first. Let me just use this tip for mine. So especially, it's actually good you get somebody to take your measurement, and it's even more important for jumpsuits and pants. There are lots of errors you can make trying to take your measurement by yourself. So once you get here, just hold it down and continue with your trouser length, or you just, since you already tied this weight anyway, you can just put your tape again and take your trouser. So because the jumpsuit, the pants part of a jumpsuit is continuous with the waist, so you don't want to take your half length up to this point then start taking the pant from here. By the time you wear your jumpsuit, it's just going to be pulling on you and you won't like it. So that's one thing I need to point out here before we move on to start making our pattern about the measurement of jumpsuits. And also here, when you're taking your crotch and all that, make sure you take it from this point so your jumpsuit doesn't become too shorter than you will have loved it to be. Okay, so that's very, very important for a jumpsuit. And also for a jumpsuit, the crotch should be a bit long. So normally I use 10.5 for my crotch length, but then for a jumpsuit I'm going to add extra 1 inch, and that's because you're going to need to sit down. So for a jumpsuit, the pants and the upper part, they are connected. So if you have it too tight, you won't be able to sit down. It's just going to be weird and you just stand out through the day. Okay, so add like extra 1 inch to your crouch length, your regular crouch length, just to give it a little bit more freedom. Okay, I particularly like free jumpsuits. That's the upper part can be fitted, but then the pants aspect should be free. That's just my preference. I see a lot of jumpsuits that are fitted even on the lower part, but just take note of your crouch length. How am I missing it? Okay, your crouch length. You can call it the crouch depth, anyone. Okay, so just make sure your crouch length is longer than what you will have used regularly for your pants, and you'll be fine with that. So the first thing I'll be doing here is to transfer the pants we created in the pants making class. So I'm going to transfer it to another paper and I'll just show you what it looks like once I'm done. So you're welcome to this class once again. I'm sure you're going to love watching this and I can't wait to see yours. I have a design in mind, so you can just create another design for the upper part of your body. You don't have to do exactly my design, but we're going to do it together anyway. I have something in mind. You're going to work with my regular flow. So while you are making yours, you may just give yours a twist as well. This is the intermediate class. I'm treating you guys like professionals already, so I expect a level of creativity from you. So let's go on and work on our jumpsuits. we have a basic pant block here. So I made use of a biro. That's because I want to, not a marker, just so I can modify with a marker and you see it clearly. Those are pants for the jumpsuit, just the regular pants we created before removing pockets, before removing band, no zipper fly and all that. So this is just the basic pants that we use for our pants making class. So I'm yet to create the pocket, even though I marked it out here, but I want to do it with you. So all of this, we are now going to work on this. This is my regular crouch. This is just simply what I use for the pants. Okay, so I told you earlier on to increase the crouch depth. So I'm just going to increase my own by 1 inch here. So instead of this line, that is the crouch line here, I'm going to increase it by 1 inch and mark. Okay, now let me use a marker so that you can see it properly. So I'm increasing my crouch length by 1 inch. Okay, up to this point where our crotch ended. So now we are going to recreate this curve. Okay, so the hip line is still the hip line, and every other thing is the same. So now we have this. That means I have to modify this. Okay. Let me mention here that I'm going to modify the lower part of my pants because I want a free pant. One, I want to increase the length. I made use of 38 inches here. So I want a super long pant. So I think I'm going to extend it by, let's say, up to 5 inches. So let's just add 5 inches to this because I want it to actually get down, you know. And that will be at 43 inches. So let me just mark that and create the hem of my, so 43 inches. And to mark 43 inches this way. Okay, so at the same time, remember this pant is a fitted one, so I don't want to make a fitted pant. Okay, so there are many things you can now do here. So this is our knee line, this is our new crotch line, this was the crotch line before we extended it, and this is the hip line and our waist line here. If you want a boot cut, by the time you get here, then you fan it out, you know, the regular boot cut. If you want a palazzo, it's just going to go either straight or you fan it out. I decided I'll make here 22 inches. That's my knee circumference. Now I will expand it to 22 inches. It was 16 inches before. So by the time you divide 22 inches into 2, you have 11, right? So now the midpoint of 11 is 5.5. So I'm going to put 5.5 on this line, then mark 0 and mark 11. Okay. So now let's recreate this. Okay. And we'll recreate this part as well. Just a smooth curve. Okay, can you see that? So I'm going to use the same 11 here. The same 11 here. So let me extend this to the base. Making the same 11, so 5.5 inches at the middle. I'm going to mark 0 and 11. And I'll just draw straight lines upward. So see why it's necessary to use a long ruler. Mine isn't long enough. Okay, so that's the main modification I'll be doing on the front. So I'm adding 1 inch allowance, sewing allowance. Okay, so make sure here is still 1/2 inch upward. So these are our main pants, don't forget. I just hope this is not becoming confusing for you. So let me trace out the main pant piece so that. So this is what we have now. And now I'm just going to add sewing allowance. I'll be adding 1 inch. You know, we use 1/2 inch when we're making pants, but I'm adding 1 inch because the upper part of my body has one. I'll be adding 1 inch sewing allowance, so that way I can just sew it together. But for the front here, we are not putting a zipper fly. We are just going to join it together. Okay, and for the upper part of the body of the jumpsuit, there's no joining together or anything, so 1/2 inch is just okay here. So take your tape and measure 1/2 inch this way. So 1/2 inch is okay for this part. So, and this part as well, there's no inseam for the upper part. It's not even getting to the upper part, so 1/2 inch is still okay. So it's only the side I'll be adding 1 inch, only at the side. So now I'm going to add my hemming allowance here. I'm adding 2.5 inches. That's the hemming allowance. And because here is straight, there's no need to manipulate the hem to fit into here. This part is just straight. I'm just marking out my 1 inch sewing allowance. Please use your tape, okay? Don't be like me. I'm trying to eyeball it, and that's because I'm used to using inches. So just take your tape and measure 1 inch if you need to. So now our jumpsuit is not going to have a band. We are not making use of a band. If you want to make use of a band, please take out the band here at this point before doing any other thing. Okay, so I'm going to mark out my my pocket because I want to attach a pocket. If you're not attaching a pocket, there's no need for this step. So just the way I did when we're making pants, I took 1.5 inch this way and 6 inches this way, and we'll create our pant pocket curve here. And this other pocket curve from the dart leg, I'm curving it this way. I will actually make this one deeper. That's because for the pant, I think the pocket was a bit too small. So these are pockets and pocket facing, and okay, we also have 1/2 inch allowance on the upper part here, 1/2 inch. So before I cut out the pockets and all that, I'm going to trace this on another paper so I can modify this for the back. So now I want to trace out the front pattern on another paper. So I have a paper under it. I'll be using my tracing wheel, but then I won't be tracing the allowance, just the main part of the pant. Okay, I won't be adding any allowance. I'll add the back allowance separately. So I'm tracing the main pants. Okay, so we'll go on and cut out our pocket piece and pocket facing from here, then cut out the main trouser. So when I was tracing this pocket out, I already added this extra 1 inch side allowance now. Okay, what I don't have here is ½ inch allowance at the top and at the bottom. So note that something just happened. I can't believe my camera failed to capture where I was cutting here. Okay, let me just try and explain this. I cut out the pocket with the allowance here, with the side allowance here, so I don't have to add another 1 inch to this pocket. This pocket piece and the pocket facing has this 1 inch allowance here. So I also cut, when I was tracing out, I traced out this top part, sewing allowance for the top here alongside the pocket pattern. So when I'm cutting this on fabric, I don't need to add allowance here. It already has at the side. So I'm just going to add ½ inch here. All right, when I'm cutting on fabric. So, and that's it about this. So I just went ahead to cut out our pants. I removed the pockets curve here, and that's just it basically. So we already have all our allowances on it, and we'll be cutting exactly this on fabric. So this is the front pattern without sewing allowance. So I want to modify this, is what I traced out on another paper, and I want to modify this now to create the back. So this is the waistline, the hip line, the crotch line, and etc. So now I want to create the back pattern from this, just like I did in the pant sewing pant making video. You're going to find the midpoint of this. So mine is around to here. Okay, so from here, measure out your crouch extension. Mine is 2.75, so I'll just raise here by 2.75. okay, so now here, so we want to connect here to this point. Like I said, you don't want this part to be deep. You can come out by 2 inches to serve as a guide. Extend here by 2 inches. This part of the crotch for the back, we're extending it by 2 inches. You see this crotch line for the back, come down by ½ inch. Okay, this crotch line here, sorry, I hope you can see this crotch line, come down by ½ inch. That's what we'll be using. We are not using this point. Okay, so if you use this point, and notice that sorry, let me make use of my marker so that you can see it properly. If you use this point, I notice that the back will look longer. I think because of the modification here and the way the curve changes. It has a way of making the back longer than the front. So when you're joining the back to the front here, you may have some issues. Okay, so come down on this line by 1/2 inch. So this is what you'll be using. So we're just going to connect our curve from here through this point and all the way up. So my waistline is 34 inches. I'm making it for 34 inches for this pant. I think I'll modify that for the front because I actually used 35 inches for my previous pant, but I think I'll prefer it tighter for a jumpsuit. So I'm using 34 inches. And by the time I divide 34 inches by 4 is 8.5. So 8.5 plus the 1 inch for that would be 9.5. So from this point, I want to get 9.5 this way. That's actually 1 inch above the waistline. Okay, 1 inch above the waistline. So you're going to take your tape and take 9.5 towards the waistline, but 1/2 inch, rather 1/2 inch above the waistline. So here's mine, 9.5 here. 9.5, so I'm just going to connect it. Okay. So we extended the crouch here. I hope you can see this properly. So we extended the crouch here by 2 inches. So in order to keep up with the back being wider than the front, okay, that's just standard. I'm adding 1 inch here and 1 inch at the hem of my pant. So I'm just going to connect this together. And this, remember, I've not added sewing allowance. Okay. So this, I'll just connect this way towards the crotch line. Okay, I'm just smoothing it out with the rest of the pants. Okay, so you should not have any curvy parts here. And so smoothing it out towards the knee with a curve. Okay, we have this curve. So now we're not going to add our allowance and create our dart. Okay, let's create our dart first. So the distance between this is 4.1 thereabout. So I'm just going to mark 4.1 here. I'm going to mark the same 4.1 from this new crouch line. So we're going to create our dart leg. I'm now going to input I'll take a dart of let's say 4.5 inches or even 5 inches. Let me use 5 inches, and I'm taking in my 1 inch dart, 1/2 inch on both sides of the dart leg. So that's it with the dart. So now we can add our sewing allowance, and here we'll make use of 1/2 inch. So for the center back, because you're going to be adding, we want to add a zip at the back. It's not compulsory. You can make your jumpsuit zip to be at the front and you do the necessary modification. But for this, our zip is at the back, and for the upper parts of the jumpsuit, we're adding 1 inch zip allowance. So I'm going to add that same 1 inch zip allowance this way. So you can actually add 1 inch at the top and reduce it towards this side. So let's do that. So I want here to be 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, and then we're just smoothing it out to become 1 inch towards the top of our pattern. So you can use 1 inch all through, but I don't just want the crouch to look bulky. So I'm making the other part of my, so this is like 1 inch sewing allowance, and this part is 1/2 inch. So this 1 inch is mainly because of the zip, else I will have used 1/2 inch. If my zip was in front, I would have just used 1/2 inch. But because So I'm now going to add half an inch allowance here, all the way down, then straight this way. So remember our 2.5 inches hemming allowance. 2.5, 2.5. So because it's a straight continuous line. So on this side, just like we did for the front, I'm adding 1 inch sewing allowance, and like I said earlier, the side of the upper part has 1 inch allowance, and I want something continuous. Sorry. 1 inch, 1 inch. You know that means when I'm sewing, I'll take in 1 inch. Okay. We're done with this. I'll just go ahead and cut. Okay, so now I can go ahead and cut my front and back pattern on fabric. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut the back. Always find a way to stabilize your pattern. I use this padlocks. So as you're cutting, remember to notch the necessary points so that when you're sewing, it will make everything easier for you. Okay, like the dart line. I actually forgot to do that on the front, and I'll do that immediately after this. So I notch the dart positioning, then I'll go ahead and mark their position, just like I did when we're making pants. So when I'm sewing here, I have to remember to sew half an inch up to this point. I mean 1 inch. I may just mark it out so that it doesn't get confusing, so that I know at exactly what point to start reducing this zip allowance. Okay, before I put it aside, let's quickly mark this dot. Just makes everything easier for me when I'm sewing. So this point here is the apex of the dart. So mark it on the wrong side of the fabric. Let me use a blue chalk so that it can be more obvious. Okay, and I'll do same on this other side. So when I'm saying my darts, I don't need to start taking measurements or anything. So I'll do the same thing for the front, and that's it with the lower part. Now we'll go and we'll go ahead to work on the upper bodies and create a design for the jumpsuits.